Okay, welcome back everyone for another research methods assignment. This time, we are observing the surveys and answering the questions. Both are important. Here we go. So, before you review and answer, let me explain what I did. I'm going to skip this part. All right, so let's actually go look at the surveys real quick. I'm not going to read through this. You guys have read this. Let's go to the surveys. Survey number 1. General strength training will have a positive effect on balance in the absence of a specific balance training. A lot of us thought this. I agreed with this as well. I'm in the agree group. This kickstarted things for us. And number 2 coming up. Second survey. Wait, nope. Sorry, everyone. This is the third survey. Here's the second survey. Nice. All right, so we were presented with an article that was contrary to our viewpoint in the first go of it. So these survey questions a lot revolve around on did you change your opinion, what are you thinking, things like that. This is funny when looking at the pie graph. I know that I stuck by my guns and said that they didn't justify their conclusions. So I know that I'm the lone voice of dissent here in this last graphic, this 11%. So I think that's really funny. And survey number 3, taking a look at it here, is kind of the wrap-up survey where we basically, summarized our conclusions and kind of were asked, where did you start? What did you think in the middle? Where'd you end up? And, looking at the breakdown of that, I think it's pretty normal. I think there's a couple things I noticed off the bat. I think it's definitely a majority of the group that changed their initial opinion after reading the first study, which I think is very natural. But I think this also relates back to what we talked about when we were talking about putting stuff on pedestals in the beginning of the semester, where one study does not a fact make. It's very, very important to remember. So I think that was interesting, definitely seeing kind of how people responded to the adversity as it pertained to, being challenged on their thoughts. All right, so let's go to the questions here. When comparing survey responses, what patterns or changes do you notice in the group responses? So I think the biggest pattern is people following the research. So like you're presented with the first article that was contrary, and then I think a majority of people changed their minds. And then when presented with research that was in line with their opinion, I think a lot of people changed their opinions back. I think that's probably the most common pathway. So that was the big pattern that I noticed. And I think in terms of changes, as I look across the 3 surveys in terms of changes, I think a majority of us at the beginning had a pretty confident stance that general strength training was going to help balance. And I think the biggest change is that by the end of it, a lot of people were a lot less sure about that. I think that was the big change. Do any responses seem unexpected, inconsistent, or difficult to explain? If so, identify them and explain why they stood out to you. As the 11%er who said that the first study didn't justify its findings, I think that was the most standoffish statistic. That was maybe the most outlier response. Though I don't think any of them seem necessarily inconsistent or difficult to explain. Well, I probably think that because I answered no on the did they do the conclusion. So it's not difficult to explain for me, but maybe for someone else reading it, it probably is. When I compare the responses across the surveys, I think the patterns and the shifts revolve around following the research. And I think, again, this is very natural, but we talked about this at the beginning where you can't put too much weight into one study. Meta-analyses and looking at the whole body of evidence is always, prioritized versus single studies. So you need to be resilient in your opinion so that you don't get swayed too aggressively. But yeah, I think the patterns and shifts that I notice are that a lot of people had their opinions pretty significantly influenced by the research, which again makes sense because we were presented with some very challenging facts and a lot of details that make a lot of sense, especially in context. But I think on closer look, again, I don't think they justified it. But whatever. Anyway, so this is my observation and reflection on kind of the survey process. This was a cool one. I think this one got me thinking a lot. I like this one a bunch. So I hope to hear what you guys have to say. See you later.